はい、本日も放課後ティータイムが始まりました。Hi everyone, we're USYD.
放課後 Tea Time.
Yay!
Welcome to episode 5 of the University of Sydney's Houkago Tea Time. 始める前にまず Acknowledgement of Country をしたいと思います。どうぞお願いします。
Today, we are meeting on Gadigal land. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Aurora Nation, and pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. 今日、私たちはガディカルの土地に帰しています。この土地を代々受け継ぎ守ってきたエオラネーションのガディカルの人々を尊重し、過去および現在、そしてその後継者となる人々に慎んで敬意を表します。
ありがとうございます。Houkago Tea Time is a fortnightly podcast organized by Sydney University's Japanese Studies Department, run by Japanese Studies students, made for all students interested in Japanese culture. Before we get into the episode, let's go around and introduce our hosts for today. こんにちは、セラです。今日はアイスコーヒーを飲みます。Hi, I'm Sarah. Today I'm drinking iced coffee.
はい、こんにちは。ズリナです。今日はなんだろうこれ。Assam hazelnut milk tea を飲みます。Hi everyone, I'm Czarina, and I'm drinking an Assam hazelnut milk tea today. Okay. Well, settle in and get comfy and grab a drink with us. Today, one of our lovely professors, Dr. Masafumi Monden, joins us for this episode. 先生、本日来ていただきありがとうございます。Welcome!
お招きいただきありがとうございます。
はい、どうぞ自己紹介をしてください。
モンデン正文と申します。シドニー大学で日本語を教えています。で、今日はですね、ほうじ茶を持ってきました。
いいですね。
So I'm Masafumi and I teach Japanese and Japanese culture and language at the University of Sydney. And today I am bringing myself hojicha.
Yay! So we just had an episode on tea. So seeing hojicha makes me happy. So Monden-sensei is actually one of our professors. Sarah and I both took some of his classes. For me, I only took Japanese 9 and 10, but Sarah, you took what subject did you take?
I also only took Japanese.
Oh, 放送事故ですか? We learned many things under Monden-sensei. Japanese 9 and 10, we covered so many areas of Japanese culture. Sensei, what would you say was the highlight of teaching in Japanese 9 and 10? Sorry.
There should be a lot of highlights. I feel very lucky that I've been teaching this unit because every year it's different. And it's partly because we don't use textbooks, as you know.
Oh, yes,
so
yes,
we can choose topics that are sort of interesting, or the topics that are sort of a current, timely every year, which is giving me extra work, but still it's very a fun activity to select topics, and every time you show your interest in the topic, that is always a highlight.
Yeah, I definitely noticed the previous units for Japanese each year had a set textbook that we would go through. So I really enjoyed in 9 and 10 being able to go through a bunch of different topics that felt a bit more recent, and also that you could discuss in more detail with your classmates and with your professor. That felt very rewarding to me.
And we were reading real Japanese texts and articles, so it really felt like I was seeing into Japan and realistically, and not just through a textbook. If that makes sense. Yeah, I quite liked the Yurukara. I quite liked the Yurukara class that we did in Japanese 9. I feel like that stuck the most to me because I just love kawaii and seeing the purpose of Yurukara. I remember we discussed if Australia had, if the Australian police had a yurukara to like soften its image, like Japan does with yurukara. We as a class sort of agreed that like the the Australian public will be like, "Fusakera now," like don't play with me. Like why would you choose to represent yourself as a cute character? Yeah, that was one of the classes that stuck to me the most. Do you have any topics that you enjoyed?
I did like a bunch of different topics that we studied. One that I'm remembering now is when we looked at what was it? Himitsu. What was the Secret Police by Ogawa Yoko?
Memory
The Memory Police.
yes.
Sorry, I forgot the name. But I really enjoyed reading literature in Japanese because I feel like it's very different to English, and I think that at least inspired me to try and read more literature in Japanese just to see what the difference is and what sort of language that they're using, which is different from like conversational or from formal like article written Japanese.
Yeah, and the way that Japanese literature is translated into English is also very different as well. Like it's a whole different experience as to like reading literature, like Japanese literature in Japanese. Yeah. Did you have a certain topic that you enjoyed teaching?
Well, all topics interest me. That's why I chose them. But one thing that I would like to say is I always wanted topics that are sort of useful for you to learn, and something that not necessarily are covered in textbook. So I wanted you to have a share of, I don't know if this expression is correct, but like a real Japan to a certain extent. But in so doing, what I sort of really was careful is not to focus too much on like a dark topics, because we tend to have like dark issues which are very important, but if you just study these, it's a bit depressing. So I wanted to make a good balance of something that is very serious and important and something that is more fun. So that's one thing that I'm always careful about. So actually, one of the really popular topic for the past couple of years is 国際離婚 to child custody.
Yes.
Which is always like someone always say that they enjoyed doing that. So I wanted to combine it with yurukara literature.
Yes,
It's a good balance. Yeah.
And we talked about a bunch of topics in the same semester. I remember it was like, I forgot the technical term, sorry, but it was like how like your address reveals if you were of a certain if your family was part of a certain class, like a lower class in Japan. And then the next week we learned about something bright and cheery. You know, I feel like it was always like something new, like that we picked up. Yeah.
I also got exposed to like a range of different issues that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
Like the kokusai rikon in child custody, I didn't know too much about. So it was interesting to see that there was this issue that was prevalent. Just good to expose myself.
And it's such a good topic for us to sort of like learn more about these like legal issues, but at the same time it sort of opens like a branch for us to learn about, you know, what is considered as a traditional family values and in a changing Japanese society. And so, yeah.
And all while we were practicing our Japanese skills as well. It's like all the articles were in Japanese. I remember like before every like tutorial, like there was like a block of kanji we had to remember that like showed up in the class. But like I feel like that just like all of that combined, like the Japanese like language learning and like actually learning about Japanese culture in the Japanese language, like I feel like Japanese 9 and 10 are actually one of my favorite like units to take at USYD, you know? So if
I
you guys
agree.
are interested, Sarah and I recommend very much.
And I'm sure that the others, Nixon, Mori, and Matilda, will all recommend taking Japanese 9 and 10 as well.
Yes, especially because Monden-sensei, was
That
a
is
very
true.
good
That is
sensei. So yeah, 結構幅広かったんですね。日本語級途中で学んだこと。結構 we learned like various topics. Maybe we'll take this opportunity to ask Monden-sensei on what kind of topics that you've researched or you are researching about right now.
So I did my PhD at the University of Technology, Sydney. And I started my PhD in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. So I was looking at how Japanese young people are represented in Japanese media, because my background was communication and media studies in combination with culture studies. But I had an opportunity to move to the School of Design. So I had to reshape my thesis or my research project to fit the objectives of the School of Design, which was slightly different from the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. So I started reshaping my topic to look at these representations through to look at this topic through the representations of clothes in Japanese popular culture, with specifically 3 platforms of magazines, music videos, and films. So that's how I sort of ended up doing a PhD in fashion studies.
It's a very interesting journey.
Yeah, but I didn't have much knowledge about fashion as a subject to study, so it was very mesmerizing, like eye-opening experience. And then after I finished my PhD, I sort of started branching out my research topics and interest in still related but slightly different areas. So not so much about fashion, but more about Japanese popular culture in general. And I probably should consider myself as lucky, because I've been able to research and publish things that I'm interested in, so in a related but slightly different topic. So I published a couple book chapters about like figure skating, which I didn't think would be a decent scholarly topic, but actually it is. And I also published article about like fashion or dress in Japanese manga, which is another interesting topic. And yeah, so all these topics. And I also am completing a book project about the culture history of Japanese male fashion models, which is another topic that I didn't think would be a scholarly topic, but it was really fun to interview all these men who are in their 60s and 70s who used to be a fashion model in Japan during the 1960s to 1980s. And it was just so interesting to listen to what they were able to tell us about their experiences. And yeah, so I'm always interested in people's history, like a cultural history of these people. So I tend to go into a qualitative research rather than quantitative research. Yeah.
What would you say is, I guess, the most striking finding you found in your research, in your recent research about the male models? Is it okay to ask about that?
Yeah.
Top secret information.
No. It's nothing. There's nothing secret about. What I found really interesting while I was doing this research is through the experiences of these male fashion models or former male fashion models, we could learn so much things that is outside of fashion industry. So it really related to Japan's economic growth, post-war economic growth from the 1960s to the bubble economy in the 1980s, when like my interviewees had a sort of like a prime of their career. And like fashion industry, and then they also worked in advertisements, of course. So like these really directly related to how society was changing in Japan. And also another thing that I was really interested I found interesting was like some of the models that I interviewed or they self-consider as Japanese, and others or their colleagues, some of their colleagues are like having a mixed heritage. And there's a sort of like a stereotyped idea, particularly when you are looking at fashion or fashion industry or modeling industry in Japan, is like if you are having a mixed heritage, you would be treated so much better than like having a Japanese only heritage. And that's what many scholarship or previous scholarship says as well. So I asked them, what do you think about this question? And like all of the people I talked to said that, there was nothing like if you are, even if you are having a mixed heritage, like you wouldn't have been treated favorably compared to like non-mixed or like Japanese models. Like it's only the only important thing was whether your appearance fit what they wanted
I see.
in the period. So
It's like contrasting like pieces of information.
Yeah, that's interesting. That their experience was different to what previous scholarly research had been on the subject.
and that really fits another set of like a research about racial identity. That like the concept of race is pretty much like a socially constructed. So if we check our DNA, for example, like almost all of us share more than 99% of the same genes or like same thing. So that really confirms what like this another set of like racial research talking about. So it's really interesting like how these particular the experiences of this particular group of people can lead us to all these like different aspects of the world. Yeah.
Sticky.
Yeah, also listening to your explanation, I'm getting a sense that your research is drawing on like a variety of different topics and different research as well. So not just a fashion, but also linking to like cultural representation, race. And also I'm sensing that a lot of it is through your media background as well, by like looking at those magazines and like manga and representation. So it's really interesting to hear all the connections that you're making across the different topics. That was interesting to me.
Yeah, and it's always, nice to look at something that looks good.
That is true.
Yeah, and it's also like just so interesting to listen to them talking about, I met this designer like a Christian Dior or like Pierre Cardin and like
These famous names.
So like a tiny bit share of like luxury and glamour that I don't usually have in my life.
And it just seems that like it seems so fulfilling, like being able to talk to different kinds of people and like be able to understand like not only like their place in the world but how the world works. And I like, I don't know, like 本当に素敵です。
And it's so interesting because we tend to have like a preconception that models has to be very, sort of, I don't know whether it's a good expression
Like
or
inhuman?
not, but like a little bit like haughty or like a diva-like
Ah.
experience, like a personality.
Yeah.
I don't know if that expression applies to male models, but like they're so modest. Like all the people that I interviewed, they're so modest, and then they shared like 2 or 3 or 4 hours of their life just for free, and just telling me all the experiences. And they said like the important thing to be successful as a model in Japan was you have to be really modest and hardworking and very punctual.
Instead of like just like forcing your way through the industry,
Yeah.
you have to work with the system. Like, you have to have people like you, I guess, and be I don't know,
I wonder if that's the same in other like modeling industries, or whether that's again like a very culturally Japanese sort of element.
Yeah, I don't know, but like still, because like the scholarship of fashion modeling is quite limited.
Right. Yeah.
There are a couple of really good ones, but it's only like a handful, if I can say.
Yeah.
And they definitely talk about these stereotypes. And they didn't deny these stereotypes in like English scholarship for fashion modeling. So it may be a Japanese thing, particularly reflecting the sort of like a milieu or like a time of the period.
Yes.
When because I spoke to these models whose career were between 1960s to 1980s. So it's sort of like the industry was still building.
Yes.
Right.
And so, yeah, they probably had to be modest, and particularly those men who did modeling earlier said they didn't need to audition. So, like, all the jobs would come to them, so they have to be quite modest to be selected, I think.
Right. So your like personality would have to sort of be involved in that process of getting jobs. That's really interesting.
That's from one perspective. Sounds a bit stereotypically Japanese, but
And like I guess it just goes to show like how important this type of research is. Like, like you said, like there wasn't many like scholarly articles on the Japanese fashion industry, and just like these type of like just recording that these type of experiences and how those people like felt, or like how they saw like their, or I'm gonna say world again, how they perceived like that era of Japan. Like, I don't know, like I guess like recently, like nowadays, like a certain type of research is preferred over like this type of like qualitative, like humanities type of research. But like just hearing like sensei and just hearing like us talking about it right now, like just like, like it just warms my heart. Like
that's something really interesting about doing research in academia. Like each discipline has a very different approach.
Right.
So my approach, especially after I moved to the scope design, because at that time I think I might be wrong, but the studies of fashion was still building. Like it was sort of like a little bit after emerging sort of period. So the main methodology or methodological approach in the studies of fashion was still like art history. So
Yes.
many of the people who established themselves in the studies of fashion were art historian. So they would talk about fashion and design as if they were talking about art, like works of art.
Right.
Right.
So, when I was doing my PhD in that sort of tradition, we were sort of told to write a thesis as if you were writing a fiction.
Interesting.
Oh.
So it might be different now, but but still, I think it's still the case in cultural studies and like design. But we in disciplines like science, for example, you tend to have a very strong, clearly defined structures. Like you start with a background, then you have a methodology, and then you start with a background, literature review, methodology, research, and then discussions and conclusions. But in humanities research, you can still have this kind of structure if you like, but you can also have a choice not to have these structures. So you may not, you may end up writing a thesis without a literature review section and methodology sections. These can be spread across your chapters. So that's like what makes it sort of similar to like writing a fiction.
I think I've noticed that based on like during some units where I've had to look at different articles in the humanities. I think the language used is very similar to what you've been describing, and it's more like a sort of creative essay almost, as opposed to the sort of formal language that's sometimes used in the sciences. It's interesting.
So even when you're talking about your interview data in science, I think you treat them more like a sort of like numbers.
Yes, definitely.
But in humanities, you can give them like if it's sort of like your ethics requires you to make them anonymous, then you can give them like fake names and still talk about as if they were talking about what they are talking about in a sort of like less sciencey way.
Really like paying attention to what they say, or like
And
like
you
the
can
implication.
you
of
can
what they
include
say.
like sort of like expressions that they had, facial expressions that they had when you are asking this question, and like you can say, oh, like so and so paused, and then
That's very
revealed
literary. Interesting.
kind of,
Yeah. Or like I would assume that you'd probably have to introduce some background details about them as an individual. Or like what sort of history that they have.
Yeah, particularly for this one, the book about Japanese male fashion models, we had to start, or I have to start from where they were born and like how they were raised.
Oh wow,
and like how they were recruited to be a model. So like that's sort of like things in a slightly creative writing-ish way. Yeah. Although it has to, everything has to be evidenced.
Yes.
Yeah, but still, the expressions that you can use are a little bit more. Although we are not allowed to use like emotive languages, but yeah.
It's very interesting.
Very interesting. I just love the kira kira in Sensei's eyes when he's talking about research. So wonderful. Okay, so I think this is a good time to segue into our weekly game segment. Yay! Today's game is 言葉合わせゲーム Yay! Sarah, do you want to read the
Sure,
rules of this
of
game?
course. So the aim of this game is to have everyone say the same word at the same time. So 言葉合わせ. So first we have a theme, and then on the count of 3, we will all say the first word that comes to mind of that theme. If everyone says the same word, then great. If not, then we laugh and we try again based on the answers that we gave until everyone is saying the same word.
Right.
So, should we begin
With an example, I guess.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
that would be good.
Okay, we can try. Okay. Would you and Monden-sensei like to try this first odai? And then try your best to awase your kotobas. Okay, so 最初のお題は日本滞在中に必ず食べるもの So food you must eat while in Japan. Okay, you have a food in mind, guys. You have a food in mind. 準備いいですか？
はい、できました。
先生は
はい。
OK じゃあせーので言ってください。はい、せーの。
お寿司。
おお一発でじゃああんまりコンテンツなくなるんじゃないですかね。もう波長が熱すぎて
たこ焼きにしようかどっちにしようか迷ったんですけど。
寿司かカレ
あ
それもあり。
よかったですね。Shall we try that again? Same topic, but not sushi.
Yeah, do you want to join in?
Okay, we should try the three of us. じゃあ寿司なしで日本滞在中に必ず食べるもの。
甘いものでもいいですか？
おー、
スイートでも。
ヒント出すんですか？いや全然。
いやそれもありかなと思って。
はいはいはい。はいはいはいはい。じゃあその答えに合わせて言ってみようかな。私。
甘いもの？
甘いもの。しようか。
はい。
しましょうか。
わかりました。
はい。じゃあ日本滞在中に必ず食べるものせーのクレープ。
ショートケーキ。
私だけ波長合ってないってことですね。ショートケーキ、ケーキ、クレープ。じゃあ
また
もう一回いきますね。
もう一回食べるもの。
食べるものですね。はい。せーの。
モンブラン。
今失敗した。
先生なんて言いました？
いや間に合わなかった。
せーのダウンって言います。
じゃあ今まで出たのはなし？
はい、なしで。
なし？
別の食べ物。
それってこと？
私はケーキって言いました。セーラーは
モンブラン。
モンブラン。で先生は言おうとした。
わかった。
ですか。
じゃあもう一回やりますか。
食
べ物ですね。もう日本滞在中に必ず食べるものじゃなくて、みんなさっきの答えに合わせて言う食べ物ですね。
はい。
ですね。
モンブランとケーキ。
モンブランケーキ。
モンブランは
ケーキ。いやバイブスでいいですよ。
バイブス。
ジミーですか？ジミーですか皆さん。はい、強制でいきますよ。せーの、パフェ。全然やってない。せーのさん、チーズケーキ。たい焼き。パフェ。いきますか。はい。せーの、お餅。
お団子。
私もたい焼きに合わせてお餅って言いました。お団子ですね。ちょっと半分半分正解、半分合ってるっていう。全然合わない。ホイップクリーム？ホイップクリーム？って言いました？
うん。
ホイップクリーム？
ケーキのデコレーション。
ああはいはいはい。ホイップクリームね。じゃあもう次必ず。
でも分かって、何が食べたいのか今急に開きました。ひらめきました。はい。
食べたいものです。
食べたい。
い
やいや日本に行ったら食べたい。今来た。
ってことは甘いものからこれ話しちゃダメですよね。
でもほら、
はい。
続きだから甘いもので。
はいわかりました。
そう。
準備いいですか皆さん。
いいですか。はい。
せーの。
シュークリーム。
またクレープ。
クレープにホイップクリーム乗せるんじゃないですか。
はい。
シュークリーム。
ちょっと似てるでしょ。
そうで、なんて言いました。
和菓子。
ちょっと待って。
伝統的な。
いや、3人はちょっと難しいですよね。
他の話題にしますか。
いや、彼は絶対に合わせるまで言います。
でもなんかもう
ルール
なく
守ります
なってきた。
いや、前の
シュークリーム、クレープ。
前の答えでも全然大丈夫だと思います。合わせれば大丈夫だと思います。
じゃあ食べ物に戻ります。
そうじゃあ普通じゃあリセットしますか。違いますか。
じゃあ
次は合わなかったらもう普通に次行く。もうこれは失敗ということで、はい。
じゃあ食べ物に戻りますね。ヒント。
食べ物。
でもその方が広い。範囲が。
とっても広いです。
too wide。
シュークリーム。
もうシュークリームが一番食べたい。
可愛いですね。
絶対食べる。
シュークリーム。
和菓子。
クレープ。
でも和菓子でも。
オッケー和菓子。ヒントは和菓子。
狭すぎる。
ヒント和菓子で前出した答えでも全然オッケー。
ちょっと待って。
はい。じゃあ次このお題ラストということで、
わかりました。
はい。じゃあせーのお団子。
ごめん。
じゃあもう一回言いますね。ヒントは和菓子。ヒント一つ目は和菓子で、二つ目はさっき出した
和菓子。
そうです。
さっき出した和菓子。
その中で2択がありましたね。ではい、日本滞在中に必ず食べるもの失敗しました。
すみません。
失敗です。
私だけ合ってなかった。
いや
難しい
ですね。じゃあ3人は結構難しいと思います。何回も2人会ってたことが何回かあったんで、もう絶対次のお題必ずきます。雨が降る日にすること。じゃあお題は
それってすごくこうベイグな感じでもいいの？それともなんかこうすごいスペシフィックな？
普通に自分がやってることで全然大丈夫です。
わかりました。
はい。じゃあ行きますか？
いきますか。
はい。じゃあ雨が降る日にすること。
はい。
せーの。ベッドでゴロゴロ。はいってはい先生は
ぼーっとする。
じゃあでセイラは読書。私はベッドでゴロゴロする。
似てる。でも
ベッドで読書でもできるんですね。
ぼーっとする。そうですよね。
半分
いい感じ来てる
0.5 でそうです。波長がもう今もう見えます。
波長
じゃあねぼーっとする
読書
ゴロゴロはいいきますかはい はい。
じゃあもう出たのでもいいの？
おお。いきます。
いきますか？
わかんないけど。
じゃあ
はい。
じゃあ
じゃあもう普通にもうセカンドラウンドで。
はい。
まあ普通に自由に何でも
うん
やってくださいね。はい。じゃあせーのゴロゴロ。えそっちの方行きましたね。わかりましたじゃあ2人はゴロゴロ
ゴロゴロ
一人は読書
読書で。
もうゆったり感がありますね。雨の日に
うん。
することね。ゆ
似て
ったり
る似てる。
そうですね。
そうですよね。
その感覚で行きましょう。はい。せーの寝る。
ゴロゴロする。
待って私が悪いです。すみません。悪かった。ゴロゴロでしたよね。
ゴロゴロ
私は寝る。
まあでもゴロゴロするって寝るってことでしょ。
わあ、じゃあ
同じで。
そう
じゃあそう 0.5 ポイントです。ってことは今それって1ポイント、1ポイント。
はい。
じゃあみんなで1ポイントゲットしましたと。
イエーイ。
イエーイ、おめでとうございます。波長全然合ってなかったですね。
じゃあ最後の大和海にしますか？
Our last resort 本当にダメな時に使っちゃわない準備しましたけど、そのお題は読んでください、セイラさん。
大和海どっちと
いいですよ。
大和海どっちかといえば
じゃあ
見ましたか？
来ました。
はい。
さ
じゃ
2択です。
はい。
はい。じゃあせーの
海。
本当に
全ラウンド失敗です。I guess we need to spend more time with each other to get to know. じゃあまた今度お茶会しましょう、3人で。
はい。ぜ
お互い
ひ。
のこと知り合いましょう。よろしくお願いします。
はい。Before we end today's episode, let's look back to last week's question. What are the two types of matcha made in a tea ceremony that I taught you guys about? The answer is koicha and uscha.
Yay! This week's question is, who is Nobu-sensei's favorite artist? 本日シドニー大学放課後ティータイムエピソード5いかがでしたか？
If you want to stay updated, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow our Instagram at USYD.teatime. We hope you enjoyed chilling with us today and look forward to seeing you next time.
では本日のエピソードを聞いていただきありがとうございました。また次のエピソードでお会いしましょう。せーの、またねー。